Guys, welcome back. Mac Rollins, Zen Cop here. This is the Zen Cop podcast, season 3, episode 1. I wanted to take a minute and apologize for the hiatus. When it comes to my family and work, it goes in that order. And my family is great, but work has been absolutely insane lately. Just a lot of good cases, a lot of good stuff, but it's really sort of limited my time when it comes to content and the podcast. And I've also got a lot of other irons in the fire with Malice Company, which, I mean, I'm sure some of you already put it together. That's also me. I do holsters, and then the Scorpion King, which is a non-porous stabby device that I created a while back that's now kind of going full production. There's a really cool collaboration coming with a company out there. I'll leave it anonymous for now, but there will be a large shipment heading their way today, actually. So I just wanted to thank everybody for the support thus far. If you can please like, subscribe, comment, all those things do make a difference. And as this podcast grows and the platform grows, anything you guys do helps. So again, thank you. And I'm looking forward to launching at least an episode a month. I'm going to probably reduce it to once a month just to kind of keep things open for me. Time is really precious to me when it comes to work and my family. So I'll probably leave it to once a month. But again, thank you guys for all your support. And this will be episode 1. I'm really excited to have Dustin Hill from Burkett Customs on the show. He and I crossed paths after we were both on Ed Calderon's show, Manifesto Radio podcast in Tijuana. So looking forward to some good conversation. Thank you guys again for all your help. And here we go. Episode 1, season 3.
You're listening to the Zen Cop podcast.
North Dakota, for those who don't know, is it's out there. It's way you're about as north as it gets to Canada, right?
I can probably drive to Canada in an hour and 15 minutes from my house.
I can hear the Fargo twang in your voice.
It's actually Minnesota twang, believe it or not. Yep, it's everything that happened in the movie Fargo actually happened out by Brainerd, Minnesota. So
for those who lived under a rock, Fargo's an excellent film. I have not seen the TV show, but I've also heard really good things. But so welcome, man. You and I crossed paths a while back. We were both guests on Ed's show, which was a really neat experience, I think, for both of us. We actually went in person to TJ, which was I had a great time. It was a little scary. I don't know about you, but it was fun. It was fun when I was there. Getting there and leaving was a little sketch, but
it was a little bit of an adjustment for me to go from Wapaton, North Dakota to TJ.
Oh, I bet. Did you fly all the way to Tijuana straight? Or?
No, I flew into San Diego and then walked across the border. And
yeah, same.
I got a hotel pretty close to there. It was a pretty decent hotel, but I go for morning walks, and I went for a little walk, and it was a little bit of a culture shift for me in regards to the homeless population and things that I would see and hear and smell, and it was an adjustment.
Oh yeah, we'll come back to that for sure. And then the other thing that we can't talk about is a fun little project we've been working on quietly that'll hopefully have its presence soon somewhere south of California. So thank you for your help with that. I'm looking forward to that dropping. It'll be really exciting. And also TNC out of Gardnerville. So it's kind of a cool collaboration. Sorry to be cryptic, guys, but it's a really neat project that we started, I don't know, a couple months ago that ended up turning out really rad. So stay tuned for that.
Super cool.
So Dustin, as much as I talk about law enforcement and stuff like that, I have cops on, but I don't have as many as people think that I do. And you are out of the cop game now. And I always have a really interesting fascination and kind of an admiration for people who leave early. I have plans to do that myself in the next probably 5 to 10 years, but we'll see where it goes. But there's always kind of a reason why the exit comes sooner than expected. And regardless of incident, I always just like to hear people kind of tell their story. But before we dive into that, for people who don't know or haven't listened to you on other platforms, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of where you started and where you are now?
Yeah, so I grew up in West Fargo, North Dakota. Um, Child of a separated home. Um, Later in life, my mom ended up remarrying, and we can get into that, but that went south fast. Um, Went to Alexandria Technical College in 1996. From 1996 to 1998, I went to their 2-year Police Academy Associate of Applied Science degree program. You wear uniforms every day. You go to formation. It's somewhat paramilitary, but you get to go home at the end of the night, and they're not super in your face. But it's a strenuous, stringent program. After that, I had gotten a little trouble there while I was at school. A week before graduation, I got arrested for driving under the influence as a minor, and that set my law enforcement career back a little bit. I sat in a jail cell and wondered, what am I going to do, man? Like this is over. I just wasted 2 years of my life. And I went in and manned up and pled guilty, and they said, don't do anything again for a year, and we'll give you our blessing, and you can go on your way in your career. And I didn't believe it at the time, so for a year I worked construction and whatever jobs I could get and try to keep my nose to the grindstone. And um, I was able to get hired in a medium maximum security private prison in Appleton, Minnesota. A buddy called me and he's like, "Hey man, you off probation yet? You want to be a CO?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a step to law enforcement, and I'm not holding a shovel, so let's go do that." So I did that for about a year and a half. Um, that was interesting. Went on to working for the Cass County Sheriff's Department in Fargo, North Dakota, where I'm originally from. Worked there for about a year and a half. And then the global war on terror in Iraq and Afghanistan happened. And a lot of the guys that were in the task force around here, the drug task force, left to go to that. And it opened up a spot for me, being pretty young and very inexperienced. You go from working on prison to being a CO to an undercover cop is quite a jump, especially with my background with addiction and um, those things. So I did that for 4 years and excelled at it, man. That was like I got to be myself with a badge. So it was quite an experience for me. After 4 years, I wanted my life to kind of settle down a little bit. Um, I'd been basically in pretty active throes of alcoholism throughout most of my undercover operation work. I worked undercover at a bar, so like it gave me an excuse to drink and do it and get paid for it. Um, so about 2 years into that, I had kind of an incident with alcohol. I almost drank myself to death, so I decided no more and put it down, and haven't touched it since 2000. I want to say 2004. So 2003, 2004. Um, so that was a really good learning experience, and I did some growing up through that. And our local police department was looking to hire, and I had been stationed out of Wahpeton, North Dakota, so I really got to know the community and the people in the community, and ended up marrying a local girl who I had my daughter with. And I was very fortunate that from that marriage, I got a wonderful little girl who's 16 now, and we're still friends. My ex and I, that we go do stuff together. We co-parent. I'm very fortunate in that aspect. 2006 to 2019, I worked as a canine drug recognition expert, dive rescue, search and rescue, canine through the whole thing. They partnered me up with a dog because I'm just easier to partner with a dog than with another human being. Um, I really enjoyed working with dogs, not so much with people. 2019 is when I finally said I'm done today, and that brings us to now.
You picked a hell of a year to call it before.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I wouldn't have made it through COVID. I just wouldn't have.
Yeah.
I'm not the type of person that, like, to tell me to put on a mask was quite a. I'm still bitter about it. So
Yeah.
I'm not a masker, so
It's kind of wild to look at that now. Every year that passes, I just kind of keep going back and going, what were we doing? Like, what, regardless of politics, regardless of, you know, what you feel about any of it, there was a large part of society that just sort of lost it mentally. And um, yeah, it definitely tested me. I work for a pretty conservative county, so we I mean, we kind of played by the rules, but at the same time, everyone else in the community was pretty. Nobody wanted to get sick because one, we didn't know what it was. Two, just getting sick sucks and it knocked you on your ass. And yeah, to this day, I look back on that period of time and just think, I bet half of that stuff we probably didn't have to do. And then I look at all the mental anguish, and the aftermath and how it really sort of altered mostly the kids. I think that was
yeah.
a wrench we threw in the engine socially for a large portion of the worldwide population, not necessarily even our population. But that's a lot, man. So there's a lot of people who don't really. I have a lot of cop listeners, and I don't have a lot of cop listeners at the same time. So for people who don't know, when we talk about undercover stuff, it can be a variety of things. It can be pretty stressful. I have a few friends who currently work there, and I have a really good friend who worked specifically with the cartel stuff a couple years ago. And that stint that he did took a few years off his life. It was unbelievably stressful. Not necessarily even the face to face. It was talking to these guys, FaceTiming them. I mean, for hours. That was probably like one of the harder parts that he had to do, and he hated it. It gave him so much anxiety, and he stopped. He's out now, but for the average listener, I think they think undercover and they think the movies. They think, I heard you mention Axel Foley,
Yeah,
which was a
with that.
fantastic
Yeah.
reference because I think that's what we all picture in our head. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's part of that. I mean, some of the movie stuff is real, but a lot of it, it's the complete opposite. You're usually dealing with some pretty horrible members of society, depending on what you're trying to get, whether it's drugs or human trafficking or whatever the case may be. How did you fall into that assignment when you? That's kind of a neat thing to jump into coming from somewhere else. It's usually kind of a sought after position traditionally.
It is, and guys fight, guys and gals fight to get those positions because I mean, you do have some. I mean, I don't even want to say some. You have a remarkable amount of freedom in that, depending on the department that you work for. And I was on a multi-jurisdictional task force, so there was a lot of, um, like our state crime bureau ran the task force, but there was a lot of leeway with sheriffs. We had multiple counties, multiple states, a lot of running around, and I'd like to say that like I was really good at what I did, but I was the only one that applied for the job, so it kind of worked out for everybody.
Yeah,
They couldn't get people down there. The pay wasn't great to begin with, and that task force kind of had a little bit of a stink on it. Not necessarily for doing things crooked, but at the time not really doing a whole lot.
sure.
And so I got in there, and you're young and you want to save the world, and you throw yourself in, head first. And basically, it was all, I don't want to say luck, but a lot of opportunities kept presenting themselves to me for, we'd gone on a surveillance mission one day, and we stopped at the bar to just see if there were some people we were looking for targets. And I'm a chatter, so I started chatting with the owner of the bar who happened to be in there bartending because they needed a bartender. And I got a job bartending under a completely different name, my undercover name. And that's kind of how we got into a lot of our, meth was terrible here
What year
during
was
that
that?
time. That was from like, I want to say 2002 to 2006, just a rough, give or take a month. So everybody was manufacturing meth in this area. They were Coke bottle method, they were pop bottle method, where they just throw all the lithium strips and all the precursors in a pop bottle and shake it up and throw it out in a ditch, and then abandoned farmsteads, all kinds of stuff, and then we would go have to find that. It was great because of the resources we had. We have, at the time we were working, the National Guard would have a helicopter that would fly missions for us if we wanted to do surveillance, or if they wanted to, bring us somewhere that, we probably couldn't go with a car, or if we wanted to be, I had one drop me off one time so I could crawl into an old abandoned farmstead to watch people cook meth with a video camera. So, it presented me with a lot of, I was never in the military, so you get to kind of play like military cop. You get to do all kinds of stuff that, you normally wouldn't do sitting in a patrol car. So,
For sure. And in or around that time, I would say meth was probably still the biggest player in the game. It was probably still really popular. I don't know if the average person knows just kind of how the drug market, the ebbs and flows, and especially out your direction, where I think geographically there's a massive difference between supply chain and homegrown and all these other things. California's a little different. Well, West Coast in general, even Southern West, where we have Mexico, so it's a totally different ball game where the dope comes from. Out where you guys are, what's the supply chain like? Does it come from the north? Does it make its way across the country to you guys? What's that like?
so usually it's not the north. We didn't see a lot coming across the north. Weed will come back or come through the north, but the meth that would come through was either manufactured in this area or it would come out of Cali. They were mailing it up to us in candles, hollowed out candle bottoms. That was a way that they would do it. Um, we had so many cooks, but you get a few guys that had ties to Californian cartels and the gangs down there, and three guys basically decimated our community. They ended up getting federally indicted over a murder that happened in Grand Forks. And I mean, we had high school kids buying ammo for a hit, like, I mean, at our local Pomida. So it was it blew through us quick. It was a lot very fast, and kids got into. I mean, they were shooting it here. They were, if they could, however they could get it in their body, they were doing it. And people don't realize that a whole like three classes, those 3 years, those three classes that went through hell as far as kids with drug use and the things that go along with that.
Yeah, there's a Minnesota in particular, um, with the crack stuff that happened even prior to there. There's songs written about it. There's all kinds of stuff. That whole area, I feel like, is kind of a forgotten about part of the states where it doesn't take much to create an epidemic for drug stuff out there. And for whatever reason, maybe it's overlooked because of location, but I feel like there's a ton of drug activity, and I would say overall, just especially in the more rural parts of the country where people assume that it's less because of population, but more times than not, it's actually a bigger issue for some of the more rural communities that are outside of the larger cities. You see that with places like, everyone knows where Stockton, California is. If I told you it was San Joaquin County, people go, what's San Joaquin? Well, that's where Stockton is. So you have this area within a county that gets all the fanfare, but the majority of their stuff and their criminal activity definitely occurs on the outskirts. I think we see that a lot with places that just sort of pop up on the map, in a traditional sense. But how old were you when you became narc?
So in 2002, I think I was 25, 24.
So that's pretty
Pretty
young.
young.
That's pretty
Yeah,
young.
real
For
young. Yeah.
for people who don't know, I mean, if you got into law enforcement when you were 18, which I don't recommend, but if you did, uh, 25 would still be kind of a pretty cool deal to get picked up for a dope team and a dope spot. So that's really neat. After well, I kind of wanted to touch on the drinking too, because I I think that's it's a major issue. It's an issue that I feel like doesn't get enough attention because it's accepted socially. And not to change gears entirely, but I really if I had to pick one substance that was the most detrimental to society right now, it'd be fentanyl. Behind fentanyl would be alcohol. I feel like it's a issue that doesn't. Is it bad for you? Yeah, I think alcohol is bad for you. I think that even in moderation, alcohol is bad for you. I'm not sober, but I definitely cut back compared to what I used to be like in terms of drinking, because it's a very destructive substance that can cause a lot of harm. But it's one of those things. My brother, he's sober now, but he fought alcoholism for better part of a decade, and it's different because it's so socially acceptable. You can buy it just about anywhere. If Nana pulled out a bundle of Coke at Thanksgiving, people would go, "Well, what are you doing?" But if Nana brought wine, it's okay. Or if Nana even brought a bottle of vodka, it'd be so. There is some strange social dynamics there with alcohol. But when you were experiencing your issues, and I know that it didn't just start with cop stuff, but when you started introducing stress into your life, did you start to see an uptick in consumption? And we can talk a little bit about your childhood. I think it's fascinating. I know that you were brought up with a single parent home. Kind of sounds like whenever a new guy would come into the picture, it would be good for a couple minutes and then go right back to what it was. So we can dive into that if you want. I'm really interested to hear about your childhood, and then we can talk more about the alcohol.
Yeah, definitely, man. So I actually did the math. I was 23 when I started with the task force. So I mainly really got into the alcohol um and in like college, a couple months in. Throughout high school it was mainly weed and alcohol. My mom had left my biological dad very, very early on. We were very young. I was, just recently born, probably 8, 9 months old. He at the time was in the extreme throes of alcoholism. Couldn't get his shit together. We went on, and she was. My mom did her best with what she had at the time. She was a hairdresser. She had her own issues with alcohol. She went through, brought in a couple different people into our lives, and um, there were a few decent ones, but they didn't stay long because it was a lot. She ended up remarrying when I was about, I want to say 7, and so that's where my last name comes from. He adopted me. My real last name is not Hill, and he was in our life until high school, and when I turned about 13 or 14 is when I started realizing that, like, hey, nobody else is living like this. Nobody else is getting verbally abused, physically abused. Um, and it made me really bitter because I was like, why is this happening? Why is she bringing this guy in here? And then like he played, no role as a father to me like you would. Um, he had his son with him when he married my mother, and it just was a lot. It was like oil and water pretty much all the time from the beginning for me. And the older I got, the more I started standing up to him, and I would distance myself. I would stay with friends. I had a very influential, amazing grandfather, Douglas Burkett. I named my company after him. He didn't know what to do with me, but he did his best with what he could do when he could do it. Him and my grandmother were amazing. I always knew that, like, no matter what happened, I could go there. But in the same sense, I didn't go there because I didn't want them to worry and to know kind of what was going on, because my grandfather spent 20 years in the military. He had his own demons and vices, and um so but he was always there for me if I needed him. So that was what mattered. And we had a little bit of a strained relationship for a while because of what was going on, and I was scared and ashamed to kind of tell him, because that was the one place other than like TV where I could see how a man is supposed to act, and I wasn't acting like a man. So that was an issue for me.
Yeah, it's kind of one of I don't know. My dad died when I was 21. Ever since then, I've been always subconsciously grasping at something, whether it was a person in my life who was influential or something that I saw, read about. Yeah, it's weird, and I still sort of have that odd thirst as a 39-year-old today. It never really goes away. So that's rough. Kind of sounds like with the adoption thing, I was kind of hoping for a happier. Oh no, it didn't work out again. So, um,
No, it just, and it, it was almost like that was like it was a whole process. Like I had to go in to court and say like, yeah, I want my name changed to this, and my biological dad showed up, and so that was
Mm.
like you're 12 or 13. That's a terrible thing to put a kid through.
Yeah.
To say, hey, I'm gonna abandon my lineage to you to this new guy because my mom says so, and that shook me a little bit. That was difficult. And in later in life, things like that would come back, and going to domestics or going to do undercover buys, and you would see people just being garbage to their kids,
Yeah.
and you just had to swallow it and leave there and do your job. And that made me feel like a huge piece of shit for quite a while. Like that ate at me. That still eats at me today. I look back, and there's a program that I went through that helped me to maintain, even be here on this earth today. But the memories, you can't live in the past, but the memories are there. And so there's days when you can, you know, you just show up and you struggle well. You're still struggling, but you're struggling well.
Yeah, kids for sure. I think any human could potentially relate to just the concept of the innocence of a child and kind of what that means. And I mean, in my opinion, there's no better victim than a kid because they're incapable of, even if they're an adolescent teenager, they still don't have the legal authority to make a decision on their own. So yeah, that's got to be tough. And then as you grow, I wouldn't trade a single day of anything horrible because, in my opinion, it makes us who we are today. And hindsight's always the best clarity, but when you're in the thick of it, it can be kind of challenging. I can't say enough about great grandparents. Mine are mostly dead. My grandma, my dad's mom, is still alive. She's going to be 97 or 98 this year. She only recently stopped driving. If I called her on the phone right now, you'd think you were talking to a 50-year-old. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
But I can't say enough good things about grandparents. I didn't realize that when I was younger, that they were probably the smartest people in the room, and they would give you those little pebbles of little nuggets of advice, and I never forgot them. So your grandpa sounds like a really positive influence in your life. I'm assuming he's
N-
passed.
He has passed. He was not negative in a single way.
Yeah.
And I look back at the things that it kept me alive at times, with this job, and regardless of, what people feel about ghosts or like spirits, or there was a lot of times where like I could hear my grandpa's voice saying like, slow down, you've got this, like, and it's weird. And I tell people about that and they think I'm nuts, but people don't trust their lizard brain or their gut anymore, and that's what kept me alive through a lot of the things that I went through. And I remember scuba diving in the river to recover a body one time, and my breathing was fast, and it was zero visibility, and it was cold, and it was like I was going on zero sleep. And I just remember hearing like Doug, my grandpa Doug's voice say like, just breathe, boy, slow down. And that's wild to me that happened in that situation, and if it was a stress response or what, but it pulled me right back in and squared me away. And that happened a lot throughout my career. A lot of decisions that I made, a lot of things that like pushed me to be who I am and be where I'm at with my company, is like my grandpa was that driving force. And there was other people that stepped in my life as well. Like, I had a West Fargo police officer, Donnie Loberg. I talked about that with Ed. That man, I mean, God bless him. Like, he's an amazing dude that had no interest in other than just getting another cop on the street and helping a kid that didn't have direction, didn't want anything, didn't need anything, didn't ask for anything, just showed up. And that makes, you change lives by doing that, one kid at a time or one adult at a time. And I'm very, very blessed and fortunate because I've been given so many gifts, and I've pissed on them so many times,
Hmm.
over and over and over again. But it keeps showing up, and that's the key. So
Yeah, I refer to those people as stepping stones. I've had a lot of stepping stones throughout my adult life, and it's kind of sad because it took me a while to figure out that those are intended to be temporary. They weren't none of them are really ever intended to be long term, and I wanted them to be long term. I had all these very positive, influential male role models throughout my career that I was like, yeah, I really want this person to be around more. And then assignments would change, or just we would go different directions in whatever it was. But that's kind of the point. You get this quick person in your life to either, give you insight or give you nothing. And when I got insight, I would latch onto it really hard. And then mostly through supervisors, because we were on at the time we were on weekend graveyard, which is just the newest, youngest shift out there. So we went through sergeants like underwear, but
Hmm.
you'd get one, really solid one. Not that the others weren't good, but the older guys who promoted late, usually investigators, that were just solid. And then
Yep.
eventually they change assignments, they promote or they retire. And yeah, I mean, I think it's real. I think the spiritual side of it is a combination of what you want to happen in your head, but it's also very much a real thing. I've had tons of experiences, and I always tell people, they listen. They're not mind readers. You have to talk. So if you're not talking, they won't understand. But if you embrace the spiritual realm and even just past memories, yeah, it's out there, but you just have to be open to it. The diving stuff is fascinating because I am terrified. I don't really enjoy I like water. I need it to survive, obviously, but I'll swim in pools. Lake Tahoe, I'm still convinced that I'll get attacked by a great white shark. I don't think there's any in there, but the dive team, for someone who has never done it, I mean, I've snorkeled in Maui, but the dive team, if you live in an area where I would say anywhere near like a true water source, or what I would call a very scary water source, I don't think people really take into the totality that comes with that, the training that you have to go through, first of all, and then just the conditions. I would be absolutely fucking terrified to go into water like that. I mean, fast water, cold water. Where I live, we have a lot of rivers, and we are a vacation county by destination. So there are, I would say, annually drownings are abundant. Even though we tell people don't go near it looks pretty. It looks really nice, but it's fast and it's cold, and
Hmm.
it really breaks my heart when parents have to wait. I would say the longest I've seen personally was about 6 months to do a recovery. The ultimate longest was about 2 years, and that was not a recovery. That was a bone recovery in a leg. But that that in itself had to be pretty wild, especially up where you are with, I would imagine, pretty significant water sources with, I would imagine, very cold recoveries, some of which would probably involve ice. What
Correct.
in God's name made you want to volunteer for that? Because that just, I can't even, I get nervous just thinking about it.
So, a buddy of mine who worked for the county when I was working narcs, um, him and I were talking one day, and I'm like, we had some evidence come up or something, and we were sitting around waiting for the dive team, and I'm like, this is dumb. Why don't we have our own dive team? And so then he went to the sheriff, and the sheriff's like, yeah, go to training, guys. So him and I just kind of we would go to training when we could, and we would beg, borrow, and steal equipment, whatever we could get a hold of. And then we just did a couple, somebody tosses a gun in the river. We have the head of the Red River that flows up to it's Red River of the North, so it flows north. It goes up into Canada, and it's zero visibility, varying depths, varying bottoms, gravel, mud, mud 3 feet deep in places, dams, all kinds of things. And then we got into rapid deployment dive rescue and night diving and deep diving and under ice recovery. So it just kind of snowballed because we both really enjoyed it. Got a bunch of people on the team, and then we had who's our mayor now, Brett Lambert, super nice guy, very intelligent man. We're very fortunate to have him in our area. He wrote us a grant for like $170,000. So we went from borrowed wetsuits that we would have to dump hot water into to get into the river so we wouldn't freeze to death to, Aga Mass where we could talk to each other underwater, and dry suits and Zodiac boats. And like they did it right. They knew that like we were doing dangerous stuff. And I did that for 20 years. I just retired from it 3 weeks ago. I finally pulled the pin because the last call out we had was looking for a guy that we thought was in the river, and it was a fishing buddy of mine. So I had to go spearhead that operation and try to find him. And it turns out he was just at home uh, relaxing. We'll put it that way. He
That's
had he
good.
had yeah, it was
Yeah, yeah.
great. But like 6 hours of two different fire departments and two different dive rescue teams thinking
Sure.
about, we're going to have to fish your buddy out of the river. Um, and he had dumped his kayak in the middle of right at the bottom of our falls or our dam, and it was anchored right there in the middle. And he just swam away and went home and said, F it, and he'd come back and get it. We didn't realize that everybody and their brother that was down there called it in and called in this kayak. So, we go looking for him. And so that was enough for me to finally say, like, hey, I did my 20 years. I lived. I'm out. And they were super cool to me, man. They gave me a nice retirement plaque and stuff. As a cop, you get those things throughout your career, and they're cool at the time, and then a week later you throw them in a box, and
Yeah.
it's just another memory that goes along with it. Um, so yeah, it escalated quickly. I think on my plaque they wrote that we'd had so many deployments and recoveries that it was too many to list, and um, that kind of like struck me as, wow, yeah, I didn't even remember half of these. Like, it's weird that you don't. They were such defining moments in your career or people's lives, and I don't remember most of it. So it's weird what your body and your brain will start to do.
Yeah, it's when people hear dive team, I think a lot of people naturally assume, oh, they're going to go rescue someone. Dive team exclusively, I would say, is recovery. Recovery meaning that they've been dead for a long time, unfortunately, and the dive team is usually deployed after someone is missing underwater for a very long period of time. And I don't even know. I personally can't think of a time that my team deployed where it was inside of an. I mean, we're talking hours probably to get there,
Hmm.
to get ready. If that person is underwater, they have expired by a large margin. There's something to be said about recovery because personally I've had a few missing persons cases. When I was in property crimes, we always got kind of a catch-all. So I had one missing person. It was a guy who went to a rave and ultimately got swept away in a pretty powerful river locally. And his body was recovered about 2 years later in a very large lake. And I believe it was a femur and some other things. They had to do the testing. They had dental, which was neat. So we had all that. But I, to this day, will never forget. And granted, he's been dead for 2 years. They know he's dead. I think for a couple of weeks, they thought maybe he was, on the shore somewhere and, surviving. But the amount of, I guess, just the emotional reaction that I got when I told them was unbelievable. And talking to the dad specifically, he said, I can finally sleep tonight. And I just thought that was so just like wild to think. I mean, I knew that I had an idea for what they were feeling. I really thought, yeah, that sucks. But it was weird. It was a very strange closure and ending to probably the worst scenario in their entire life, right? So it's weird to think about the recovery aspect and finding something because even as a father today, I think about this a lot, especially with missing persons cases, especially kids, where I think, would I rather see a body or would I rather not know the rest of my life? And my answer is always the same. I would rather see a body than not know what happened. I'm not talking about water specifically, but
Hmm.
if my son were to go missing today, I don't think I could ever have a normal life not knowing, because there's been scenarios that are very rare that have proven otherwise, right? But yeah, it's kind of a morbid thing to think about, but the relief that you've probably brought to so many families is huge. Um, yeah.
We've had, um, I guess me personally, I had a pretty negative experience recovering one that had been gone for about 6, 7 months. We had an informant here um, go missing, and younger college kid. It was on, I believe, 60 Minutes, or yeah, it was 60 Minutes. The Andrew Sadek case, and the family was not cooperative with us, and it was a. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think that, like, I'm glad that I brought the family closure and was able to locate that body. But if I had to do it again, I wouldn't have went and looked that day. I wouldn't have even gone. Um, that was a defining moment that changed me forever. It changed 3 different officers' lives who were involved in that. The officer who was the case agent for that informant was absolutely destroyed and lambasted by the family and accused of everything you could imagine. And I think about that a lot, and all the, I know what it is. The family's upset about losing their son. I get it. Um, but we didn't make any of the decisions that led him to where he was at, and the decisions that he made for that. And they sued everybody on the department in regards to that was involved in that. Fortunately, the dive team is volunteer, so we were never paid for that for 20 years. So um, I like to tell people I gave myself PTSD for free.
Hmm.
Um, but that family just drug that agent through the mud, and it ultimately ended his career. And it's unfortunate because he was probably the best one of us that was out there, honestly, like as a cop, as a just a good human being. And I think about how his life was forever changed from me finding that body, and I have some guilt about that. And I'm working through it, but they don't blame me. They don't, you know, any of that. But they were doing their best to find this kid, but it was it wasn't like they were out there pushing, so to speak. And I was a canine guy, so I was always out looking for different areas where he would be. And I pushed our team one day. I'm like, let's go do some training and see if we can find him. And we found him after being in the river for a significant amount of time, and it was pretty terrible. So that cold water preserved him pretty good, except for what the fish and the turtles and nature got. So
Yeah,
it
the body changes in water big time.
it it, it does. There's fish and turtles inside him
Mhm.
when we found them, and it just you do your best, and then you do your best to get them out of the river before the media gets there and takes
Yeah.
pictures. And so by trying to keep the media from seeing the bodies, like we're the bad guys, like we're trying to keep a secret. It's like, no, would you want to see your deceased child on the news? I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And and people don't realize that. And then you get people on Facebook and all that social medias, like, oh, he was murdered. He wasn't murdered. So you get things like that, and those things stick with you. I For a while there, I when I wasn't dealing with it, and we can get into the PTSD stuff later, but I didn't think it bothered me. I remember having a sergeant say to me, "I'm glad you were the one that found him." And I remember thinking, like, am I a fucking demon? Why would you say that? You're glad that I'm the one that found him? And he goes, because I know you're gonna be the one that like can handle it. And I remember thinking, I'm destroyed about this. Like, what outward emotion am I not showing to show you that I'm like devastated by this? This isn't fun. Um, so you go through different stages with each body you find. You have different incidences. I had a guy that decided that life wasn't worth living anymore, so he drove his truck down a boat landing and made it 143 yards out into the river and waved at people as he went in with his seatbelt on. And we went out there, and it was 50 miles away in zero visibility, and you found the body when you bump into it.
Hmm.
And so people are like, well, how do you see him? I'm like, I don't know that I've ever had my eyes open when I'm in the water, to be honest with you, unless it's where I can see more than 10 feet. Otherwise, I just shut my eyes, because you see something and you think it's something. And it was just easier for me to find my center when I was underwater with my eyes closed. And it's weird. I have terrible ADD, and I'm on adult medication for it now. But at the time, diving was the one thing that made my brain quiet, because I had to focus on everything to stay alive. So there's no outward stimulus that's going to take you away from, I need to continue to breathe. I need to count my breaths, and I need to continue the search. And I need to do it in a methodical pattern, or we're going to miss something, or we're going to waste time, or other officers are going to have to get in this water who are not as skilled or have as much experience, and they could potentially get hurt or die just like I could. So there's a lot of stress on you to perform well and perform often.
The yeah, what you just said was, I'm sorry, it caught me off guard. That's a really, I didn't think about it that way. And for the first time in my entire life, I think that actually sounded kind of nice. When I think about diving, it kind of sounded really scary, but that actually sounds very, I don't know, liberating, very free.
It it is because you are basically a weight on an end of a lead, or your line, searching. And
Yeah.
I joke about it. I'm just the dumb guy that holds the leash for the canine dog, or I'm just the dumb guy on the end of the leash for the dive handers. But you minimize the things that you do so that you seem humble. But like, it's wild, man. That was probably the dumbest shit that I've ever done, was diving. I mean, it's not safe.
No, and there's all kinds of weird rules, things you can and can't do afterward, and elevation stuff that I know is kind of tricky. But you had mentioned something, we had talked offline a while ago about it, involving, it was something involving therapy and diving and
Hmm.
ice, something cold. Is that kind of in the same category where you guys would train, or is that something you did personally in your own time?
Just personally in my own time.
What is that?
The, like, under ice diving.
Yeah.
So we have, like, if we're going to do a recovery on a frozen lake, we'll go cut a hole in the ice, drill some holes with an auger, cut a hole in the ice, and then put a tent up next to it and get 3 divers ready, and in you go under the ice.
Wow. Is
And
it just freezing cold or just?
well, you have a dry suit on, but there's a reflex in your throat that can close when you enter cold water. So
Yeah.
we take the cold water and splash it on our face and the back of our neck and stuff to kind of get our shit together. But our auga mask failed a couple times, um, either due to poor maintenance, or we were unable to pinpoint like how and why. But both mine and Josh's gills opened up one time when our fresh air gill on the side opened up when we were underwater. And there's something to be said for having freezing water shooting onto your face where you breathe and talk. And we both bailed out of the hole pretty fast, and we were giggling about it afterwards. But um, we were out probably 10 more feet, we'd both be dead.
Yeah.
So it's diving is therapeutic for me, and I don't have an answer for you. But like I said, it's the one time where I don't feel like the outward pull of the world on me. There's nothing that you can do other than be present where your feet are in those situations. And I've heard SWAT guys talk about that too, where they get in their zone or whatever. Or anybody that's sports people, getting ready to go to the big game, you get in a zone, you get in a different headspace. And I never got that from anything other than diving. So that's where I find my peace a lot of times.
Yeah, there's a lot of control with anything involving the ground and the earth. There's very little, I mean, you have some control, but I always joke that if I was in the ocean swimming around, a shark would look at me like, "What are you doing?" Because I just look so out of sorts. And in the water, you have some control, but depending on what water you're in, you don't have very much, especially if it's fast water or deep water or cold water. Um, yeah, that's got to be rough. I wouldn't want that assignment, but I have a lot of respect for the guys who do. Um, the recovery portion, especially, it's tough, and we have a lot of drownings every year, and it's you know, you can tell people about it all you want. I don't think, you know, we even had one recently. It was kind of a very tragic incident that happened. Just a family out on vacation, and it's not like it's dangerous water. It's just either your kids aren't wearing a life jacket, or they're, be smart about that. But I feel like there's enough information out there for people to be aware of it and be smart. But we still see a significant amount of drownings every year, um, especially where the water's cold. And 10-15 feet makes a huge difference for people who don't know. And once you get past a certain depth, there's things you can't do. And it's kind of wild to talk to a parent and you're explaining to them, yeah, we can see your child, and they're looking at you like, why can't you get it? Well, we can't. It's impossible scientifically, physically, to go down there and do that right now.
Hmm.
So that's just kind of heartbreaking. But yeah, you did that for 20 years, and I'm assuming that that was after you had left law enforcement. So you still did that on your own, or was that
For,
something that you continued to do?
when I left law enforcement in 2019, they gave me my retirement credentials, and we parted on good terms. I'm very fortunate, considering how I left, that I was extended that grace and that respect. Um, but since 2019 till now, I did that all just volunteer on my own time because I was trained, and they didn't have a lot of money in the budget to train new people, and it's like I used to say I'm already screwed up. Why screw up anybody else? And that's not like the mindset to have. But um, yeah, I pretty much did it just after law enforcement too, just to do it. So
Nice. So going back to 2019, and I know it doesn't start the year of, but there's probably a multitude of things that happen. People always say, "Well, why'd you leave?" And it's never a sentence; it's a story. It always is. I mean, you can put it into a sentence. Figured out I hated the job. I was too stressed out. Whatever. When did you start noticing that? I guess I don't know. Things were changing. When did you start noticing that there were issues? I mean, I'm throwing a lot of questions at you, but tell me about when you started to realize or even think about, I should probably leave. This is a time for me to exit.
so a couple friends have some good stories about that. Um, so in 2017, I was our Southeast Fraternal Order of Police Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. And I remember getting that award and thinking, what a waste of my time. And that's not the attitude to have.
Hmm.
And, um, you know, 2014-ish, I started like not really like the things that I thought would just be memories started bubbling up, and it wasn't bad until like 2017. And I remember like I, I I always try to mentor kids, and I always try to the kids were really important to me because of my childhood. So I tried to like be the boogeyman in the night that would come, help these kids. Um, and I was sitting and having lunch one day with an officer of mine that was a trainee and a buddy, and um, I just a kid came up to us, and I was like, "We're eating." Like I was a dick, and I think about that. Like I did not change that kid's life in a positive way, and then that like stewed on me a little bit, and I'm like, "Why am I doing this?" Well, there was some things that led up to that. I had a very young child at our Circle of Nations school that had committed suicide because she didn't want to be sent back where she was going to be molested by her family, but her behavior was not that she could stay there. And I had to interview a really good buddy of mine who was a school resource helper or whatever, like not an officer, but an officer basically. And I had to treat that like an investigation, and how I had to talk to him and how I had to interview him. Um, like that made me realize that like loyalties don't matter. Solving cases and truth does. And that that was one tick that started really getting at me. And then anything with dogs. I had an incident when I was working undercover, and I had gone in to do a buy. It was just going to be a little bit of meth. I was wired up and a little bit of weed. And I went in the house, and I immediately almost threw up because the smell was so bad. And uh, they were they were abusing the few dogs that they had. They had killed a bunch of other dogs that they were killed them in very inhumane ways, and they were eating them to survive, basically subsistence, subsistive living, and they had no like sewage in the house, so like they had running water, but the toilet would just dump into the basement and fill up with like feces and toilet paper and dog shit and people shit, and the kids were downstairs playing trucks in it. And I bought the drugs and I left there before like I knew about like all the dogs. I knew that like there was shit going on in there. So we contacted social services, and this was pretty early on in my undercover career. So they were like, do you want to blow your cover over this? And I'm like, we're not leaving those kids in there. So we went back there, and during the search, I guess they like I was pretty upset about the situation that was in there, and I was sitting like it was the first time I felt like this is really ruining me. Like this is not conducive to me. Like this is going to catch up to me someday. Is basically what I thought, and it did. But it didn't catch up to me for many years, and then it I really started struggling, and the department two different times sent me to therapy, and it was I talked about this with Ed. It was kind of like a game. I can win at therapy. I can outsmart this person so I can get back to work and get on the job. And like
Hmm.
I always had this thing like I have to do good. Like I have to make a difference every single day that I go out. And a lot of days you don't make a difference. You show up and you punch a ticket and you leave, and that's okay too. I mean it's hard to grasp. And so these dogs, like it just haunted me. And I had a domestic we were going to in the morning, and I ran over a dog on the way to the domestic. And I remember my sergeant's like, "You good? You gonna do the report?" And I'm like, "I fucking guess." Like, yeah, I'll do it. And a short time after that was my last day. I came into work. I'd been taking a lot of vacation time and sick time and whatever I could to not be there. And still at this time, like my company was starting to take off. We were starting to get popular on the internet. We were starting to really have some business. Um, I didn't realize like I would just go to work and stay at home. Like I live on a farm out in the middle of nowhere, so I would go to my farm and I wouldn't come hang out in town. I wouldn't go do things. Excuse me. I started really isolating myself, and I just wasn't the person that I knew I could be. And I came into work one day, and a really good buddy of mine, he's a very good sergeant. He was new. He'd newly promoted. He didn't know how to deal with me. Um, but in all fairness, like at that point, nobody really knew how to deal with me.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to deal with me. And I said, "Hey, Sarge, I got to go home. I can't be here right now." And I didn't give him an explanation or a reason. I just said I can't be here because honestly, I fucking didn't know. Like I couldn't put it into words what I was feeling, or
Hmm.
like, at this point I was pretty suicidal. I I was withdrawing from my family. I was just lost. And he kind of made a joke because we're friends. Like you fucking cops joke. He's like, sure pussy or whatever, something like that. Like it wasn't meant to be hurtful or derogatory. It meant nothing. And I said, you know what, dude? And I just snapped. I'm like, today's the day. Fuck you. I'm done. And it was the lowest point of my life, man. I unbuckled my belt and I laid my duty belt on the desk and I laid my badge on the desk and I said, I'm keeping the dog. And I got in my squad car and went home. And they came and got my squad car that night. And I went back in the next morning, and the chief's like, dude, you need to figure your shit out, get some help. We love you. We're here for you, but you're not here for you right now. And I wasn't hearing any of it. I just, I'm going to make my way. I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to be, I'm going to make my business something awesome and be this nonsense, just total nonsense. Um, I was completely delusional about my mental health and where I was at. And throughout this, I kept like finding reasons to stay alive, but like I was surviving, not thriving.
Yeah.
And so then, my life changed about a year and 8 months ago. I went through a program called Warrior Path with BoulderCrest.org, and it gave me the tools to focus the beam and gave me a renewed love of life. I have a, a much more reciprocal relationship with my daughter and my wife and my friends and my coworkers in my life. And I look back now, and that was like the best thing that ever happened. And they're like, how do you go from officer of the year to FU and quit? And I mean, it, I'm surprised I made it that long. To be honest with you, it was sheer determination and grit at that point. Like I'd wake up every morning and throw up. I didn't sleep. Um, I was terrible to be around. I, I was never abusive to anybody because I grew up with that. So like, no matter how bad shit was, I would never I'd never want to hurt anybody. But man, I wrecked some doors. I yanked a door off hinges one time. I was completely uncorked. And, I thank my buddy Ty Ranky for calling me one day, and he's like, "Hey, bro, you're a wreck. Go get some help. You're not you. You're not." And like just being you. And I kind of laughed, and I'm like, "Fuck you, dude. I got this. Just you worry about you." And a couple months later, I called him. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna kill myself. I need some help." And Boulder Crest was on the phone with me like the next morning, and made a new way. And it was funny because I fought it the whole way. Like I fought going there. I tried to start a fight with my wife, so she'd be like, "Whatever, fuck you," and then, you know, but she was like, "Yeah, yeah, be mad at me when you get back." Like she's a cop too, so she got it.
Yeah.
Um, and she's actually a canine officer now, so like, I get to relive that every day with her Malinois now. So,
Just dog hair
um,
everywhere.
and I own a dog boarding facility also,
Yeah.
so there's just dog hair on everything. But and then I was like, I'm gonna try to find a way to get out of this. Who do I know in Colorado on my layover? Who do I know in Texas where I can,
Hmm.
you know? And
And you're flying out there, so this is commitment. You're
yeah,
going.
yep, I'm going. And I even got to the airport, and there was some guy like being a jerk to the flight attendant. I'm like, I'm not a cop anymore. I can kick this guy's ass, and then I can go to jail for a couple
Yeah.
days.
Get kicked off the flight. You don't have to go anymore.
Yep. And seriously, man, I looked for everything I could think of. And I got there and they picked me up, and it was just like one of the dudes is like, "Welcome home, brother." And I'm like, "Okay." Okay, sport.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
and a day later I felt like I wasn't dragging around 150 pounds of dead dog and dead kid memories.
Hmm.
And it gave me the tools to be who I'm supposed to be, and to succeed at the things I'm supposed to succeed at,
Yeah.
and to help where I can and make a change. So yeah, that was my last day. It was not my proudest moment. But like I said, everybody's got horror stories about their department, how they screwed them or what. Man, it was just a bunch of really good guys who cared about me and cared about the city. And I was so blessed and fortunate to work with such amazing men and women every day, that all the turmoil that I ever brought on in my career was brought on by myself.
Hmm.
And to be able to realize that and to take stock in it and think like, oh, the stupid shit I did, and I was still given this opportunity to come out every day and represent, the Wahpeton Police Department, and be a positive force in society. And so, there's no, like, I've never gone on a podcast and been like, they ruined my life, or those guys that don't take stock in their own behavior. Um, I had a sergeant one day I called, Tim Appel. He's a really good friend of mine. And I called him up one day, and I was just bitching. I was just in my negative, stinking thinking. And just out of nowhere, he goes, "You know what, Dustin? What did you fucking expect?" And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm bringing this on myself. Like, there's nobody to blame here but me." And you're in charge of your own mindset, man. Like, you can wallow in your own doom slide, or you can get up and say, "I'm gonna meet today out of bed." There's days still where I get out of bed and I go, "I did it." And then I go take a shower and I go, "I did it." And I brush my teeth and I go, "I did it," just so I could start my day off with some wins.
Hmm.
Like I started something and I cut it off my list. So I'm grateful to them, because I wouldn't be here today without the tools and the help and the care that they gave me. And eh, cops can see through bullshit. So when people are not who they say they are, or they're, I remember going into a therapist and talking, and like she had to take a minute and she got sick because of the things that we were talking about. I'm like, I can't, this person is not going to help me.
Yeah.
You have those things in your life where you can take the easy way out, but the only one you're hurting when you take the easy way out is the family that's left alive after you're gone.
Yeah.
So,
It's I want to talk more about the program, but um, going back to, I guess, just the signs, and your friend that you talked to hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's the way I would describe law enforcement. There's good agencies and there's bad agencies. There's agencies who don't know what they're doing because they haven't experienced it yet. Until they do, well, then it's trial by fire, trial by error. It's the same thing with equipment, but for mental health, there's a lot of agencies who don't want to, um, I guess, dive into some of that stuff because it makes them uncomfortable, or it's just something they haven't done before, and it's like a conveyor belt going the whole time, and on the conveyor belt, there's things that can pass and there's things that can't. So while this person, this supervisor, this coworker, this is in a work setting, is talking to you about this stuff, there's still a job. The conveyor belt doesn't stop. And so you get the check-ins, you get the, hey, how's it going? But I would say, and I'm guilty of it too. For every 10 times I ask someone, hey, how's it going, man? There's one or two where like I really mean it and I really have the time. And it that always messes with me because I always wonder, if I had done this, if I had done that. And I do have friends who have killed themselves. I've had that experience multiple times throughout my life. And, you know, we all know that there's talkers and there's doers, and the talkers talk and the doers do. And if someone's talking about it, great, fantastic, jump all over it. But at the end of the day, if you don't meet that criteria or you're not willing to do anything, you and I both know that life goes on. The next day, life goes back to normal and the sun comes up and everyone's got to go to work. Everyone's got to keep going. And then, a couple weeks later, Dustin, I mean, I meant to talk to you again, but are you good? No, yeah, I'm good. But then the moment's passed. And so,
mhm.
like, I think it's hard for anybody to be vulnerable, let alone in an environment like law enforcement, any type of environment where I would say it's not, these days it's not as bad as it used to be, but it's definitely not where it should be. And I'm curious to see where it'll be in 20 years. But I think you and I are both very similar in that we wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything that I experienced. I wouldn't change a day of it because of what it made me. The cost was huge. And 5 years ago, if you would have told me, hey, you're still going to be dealing with this shit 5 years, I would have blown my head off easily.
Mhm.
But hindsight, I mean, for anyone who's listening right now, who's even thinking about that, not suicide, but leaving, I guess there's a fine line between I'm aggravated with work and I shouldn't do this anymore. And there's a big gap there, unfortunately, where, you know, there's days where I hate my job. Yes, there's months, there's years where I've hated my job. It doesn't mean that I'm ready to quit. But for people listening, would you say that everything happened the way it should have for you perfectly? Or was there some point where you probably should have said, no, I shouldn't be doing this anymore? Versus, I mean, I know we like the way it happened because it brought you here, but were there signs earlier that you just kind of thought were, nah, this is just the job, this is just stress, this is just that, where you probably should have put more of an emphasis on thinking about a departure sooner rather than later?
Yeah, I should have left after that little girl case.
Yeah.
I it was kind of a weird setting of events that the little girl was the same age real close to the same age as my daughter at the time. We live in a small community where the only place to like go clothes shopping unless you do it online is like Walmart. So she had like the same pajamas as my little kid, and then having to question your buddy and then like sit and take pictures, and the things that led to her taking her life are so impactful and so terrible that most people don't even realize that that still happens. Um, or, you know, our Native American population is so underrepresented and under just the care that's given them, and is not the same. It is not like it should be. And man, there's so many things that could have happened to prevent that. But it's life, and people keep, you said the wheels have to keep turning, and they didn't. There was no wrongdoings by the school. They did everything that they could do, but it just there's realizing that there is people in the world that exist solely for themselves and solely to prey upon people, like that made me start really really hating people.
I think you and I share that in common. I
Yeah.
like it's fun being creative, having the ability to just make something. Um, it keeps me sane, even though sometimes it's challenging. It's just working with your hands, and I cannot speak enough about having a hobby outside of your career, especially cop world, where you can do something, writing or just doing something, exercising that creative part of your brain that needs to be, and it doesn't always have to be. I mean, you know, I always tell people do something different than what you. I mean, shooting's fun. I love shooting, but that's just something I do a lot at work too. So let's do something different. Let's, you know, that's neat. So when, I mean, you're making guns now, which is really
Yep.
cool.
Yeah.
When did you transition from, I guess, just the knife grip stuff? When did you start actually making firearms?
So we got a grant to, that was my long-term goal. Like we had started making 1911 grips. I had a buddy call and he's like, "Hey, can you make 1911 grips for this thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, dude." Like, I had to look it up. I'm like, 1911s, like these are dumb. And I got one and I'm like, "Oh my God, these things are amazing to shoot. These are these all other guns are based off this. This thing's
Oh yeah.
amazing."
Yeah.
And Bob Marvel is like the 1911 Jesus, and I got a grant to go, go to a class put on by him and an amazing man named Craig Schneider at Schneider Customs, and they really, um, you know, Bob could tell I saw a couple things, and like they were super cool to me, and we started, getting into the 1911 aspect of it. We do use some outside parts, but it's kind of, gilding the lily at that point. You'd spend time making a $20 part or buy one. Well, as long as it's and it, a, a high precision part, we're going to use it. And after that class, my buddy John Reeves from the Boneyard, Alaska, bought our first two guns and uh, liked him, and he's a Joe Rogan guest, and he brought a picture of him on Joe Rogan, and they discussed it. And
Nice.
yeah, he had brought my gun grips on the year before, so the amazing man, super nice guy, but he has been a big supporter in what I do in my life, and um, I'm a big fan of his, and I consider him a very good friend. So yeah, I'm very fortunate to the things that I've seen and got to be part of, and that's where the guns kind of took off. And now I've got Joe Tolson, my business partner and buddy and brother-in-law. He has taken over the grips and the knives pretty much, and I'm doing all 1911 stuff. That's our focus, and that's where my passion lies. And we can do everything here. Our motto is let us build a gun around your grips
Oh
instead
wow.
of buying grips for a gun. We can do everything here. You want a gun with dinosaur bone grips? Well, let's do a dinosaur themed gun. Let's do um if you're a huge fan of, you name it, we can match the gun up to the grips, and the grips are all done in house. We do all our own stabilizing. We have a pretty large collection of woolly mammoth tusk. um we've been very fortunate. I didn't get into that, but we had when I got out of law enforcement, I tried to get the PTSD disability for law enforcement in the state of North Dakota. Refused it. Um, absolutely terrible. North Dakota workforce safety is terrible dirt merchants. They're not good humans. And one of the guys called me one day and he's like, So what incident gave you PTSD? Because I have a buddy who was in the military and he was in Iraq and he's fine. And I basically said some things that would probably get you deplatformed to him,
Mm-hmm.
in regards to going to his house and giving his wife her first orgasm and like really
Oh
inappropriate
God.
shit. I was fucking pissed. And I said, "Fuck you, give me my money." And he said, "What?" And I go, "Well, you're not going to give me the disability." And now I wasn't in a good place. I said, "I want it all now. I'm going to cash it out. I'm going to cash in my 20 years of retirement. I'll take the penalty. Give me the money now." And I put it into my backpack. And that's when I met John Reeves. I flew up to Alaska to find Mammoth Tusk and Make It or Die. And I went around Alaska with a buddy who was up there that I met from Instagram. And Chuck Leak is just an amazing human being. Picked me up from the airport in a like an old Studebaker from the 50s. And it was surreal, man. It didn't get dark. And he's like, "You want to meet John Reeves, that guy from the Boneyard, Alaska?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I want to meet John Reeves."
Mm-hmm.
And so then I went up there and, my wife is a patient woman
Yeah.
to let me just fill my backpack full of money. And like she's a cop. So like she knew that like I had to do it and I had to, I was going to make it or fall on my face. I didn't care. There was no, looking back now, there was no like escape plan.
Yeah.
It was no one's coming. You're going to do this. It wasn't like even in my, terrible mental state and terrible, outwardly, like people could see it on my face. I'm a very easy read. You pointed it out earlier. You can see it on my face when I'm struggling. And so I think John saw that. And he's looked out for me since. I mean, we're where we're at with our guns right now because of John. His purchase with our first two guns, and his support, and his and he didn't do it just to be nice. I mean, he went through the guns and like made sure that they were quality, and before he
Yeah.
gave me the thumbs up. And he's a no nonsense, no bullshit guy. I mean, if you follow him on the Boneyard, Alaska, or you see him on Joe Rogan, um, when he speaks, it carries weight. And um, he's just an amazing man who's lived a very interesting life. So I've just been blessed with these guns and blessed with this business. And um, I I'm an example of, after law enforcement there is life and you can thrive. I mean, I'm a completely different person now. Um, that old life, it came to an end when I left in 2019, but I didn't really feel like it was over until I retired from the search and rescue and the dive stuff. And my wife and I had gone out to dinner and we went and they gave me like a little ceremony and a plaque and stuff. And I was like, man, this is like, it's all done now. Like it's all over. There's nothing left. My canine dog has passed away. So that's no longer part of my old life. And I'm not doing, I'm not, I had to get over the fact that I wasn't important anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm important in other aspects, important to people, but I wasn't important to the job. And that's a hard pill to swallow, man. When you're like the go-to guy, like I was so used to being called for so many things, the drug recognition expert stuff. If anybody knows anything about that, a hard that's a hard certification to have and keep. The canine stuff, the search and rescue, you know, um, because I had the upbringing that I had. One thing that really helped me in law enforcement, and the biggest part that cops don't realize till it's too late in their career is the people that you are passing judgment on or protecting or serving in your community are the people that are going to either hang you when you fuck up in the media or come out to help you. And that helped me navigate a lot of, you know cops do dumb shit. And I went down the list and checked them all off, doing dumb shit, whether it's alcohol or money or divorces or adultery or just being a shithead. And the people that are there to stand up for you, or or crucify you are the people that you deal with every day. So how you deal with them and go into that makes a huge difference. You're there to protect and serve, not to lord over, and that's a class that I wish that they would teach sooner, to officers. You know, a lot of the problems that we're in today are cops with the mentality of us against them. Well, it's not. We're both in the same cell. It's just a real big town, you know. And you got to live with these people. You got to see them when you're out and about. And yes, you need to have some level of decorum, but you're still a human being. So
Yeah, that's very true. Um, Not to go backwards, but I do. We kind of cut it off unintentionally. I want to talk a little bit more about the recovery process for you. We were talking about you being at the airport. Can you tell me a little bit more about the program and just for people who are thinking about that stuff? I've been to a couple retreats. I went once as a guest and once as a peer. Um, you know, I think a lot of guys get turned off by it. I think that there's a variety of options out there. Some are faith based, some are really heavy on the cop stuff, some are light on the cop stuff, some are really into psychedelics. It just kind of, there's tons of options out there. What did you like about your program? But more importantly, what made you be successful with the program that you went to?
so what made me successful um, there was 8 people there, as or there was 8 of us students, all walks of life, from careers in law enforcement, from chiefs to street level guys to guys like me that did like SRT stuff or like DRE or all that rigmarole. There isn't anybody that was in that class as an instructor that hadn't been through the program and hadn't graduated from the program. There's no drugs, there's no doctors, there's no mandatory reporters. There's five five instructors, so to speak, and then the 8 of you, myself included, and knowing that this program is there, like they were all everybody was very humble. It wasn't like I'm better, so listen to me. I never heard that once. I never heard any of the religious aspects. There was never any of that. Um, we were given freedom to, I mean, it wasn't like they took our shoelaces away. You have some of those experiences where you go to a place where they're like, no belts, no shoelaces, no, it wasn't like that. We kept our phones. It gave me an opportunity to disclose all of the things that made me feel like a piece of shit that I did in my life, that I carried every single day, that I could not talk to another human being about. Because let's be honest, like, cops think some dark shit, and we see some dark shit. I can't go talk about 90% of that with probably 98% of the population, because they're either going to look at me like a demon, they're not going to understand it, or they're going to laugh at me and piss me off. So it gave me an opportunity to be with people that like have also been there and seen that, and you can't fake that. I mean, I mean, I mean, if they're in there doing their song and dance, or if they're genuine.
Mm-hmm.
And every single person in there dealt with me like I was their only project on earth, and that I was the center of their being. It wasn't like you had to push this program through. It was so many different things that reaffirm that I'm a good human being and that I've done good things. I've just seen bad shit, and it doesn't need to define me. And I can go through the whole process if you want. I mean,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
from so I called them and they called me back the next day, actually, because I think they could kind of tell from my application. And then my buddy Ty called in and said, like, hey dude, like, this guy's probably sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
And this gal named Shannon Strope called me, and the first thing she did was um ask how, like what's going on, like how am I doing. And you could see it in her face, like she cared. And like you could see when I talked to her, like she had been in the exact same, like we read people, right? As cops, like it's our job. We've got about 3 seconds to figure out if you're a threat, if you're gonna, and or if you're full of shit, or if you've got some sort of thing that you want from it. And all I got from Shannon was respect and care, and from down to not wanting to stress me out about the plane ride, the plane ticket. They pay for everything. This is no cost to you whatsoever. Um, and they made sure that I didn't have a ton of layovers. They made sure that they checked in with me while I was flying. That was another thing that kept me from absconding. Um, and I got off the plane, and like I said, you know, Joe Begley comes up to me, and um, at the time he was a Warrior Path guide, and he's like, "Welcome home, brother." And I told you, I'm like, okay, sport. Like
Yeah, sure.
I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid, and so we got in the truck, and it was me and two other guys in the back seat, and like you could have heard a pin drop in there.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, like, oh, this is gonna be a terrible 9 days. Like,
It was
what?
nine days.
Yeah, it's nine
Wow.
days. And I think they've condensed it to 7 days. It's a 90-day program, but 7 days in house. And then you have Zoom calls every week with your group. And then you leave with an app, a Warrior Path app, and it's got daily gratitude, books to read, people's gratitude corner, libraries, resources. If you're having a divorce, if you're having you need some guidance. There's a million people waiting in line to give you a hand. It's all so such a great package for warriors, all in one program. It's the things that they have family retreats you can go to after you graduate, and you can just go up into Texas and stay at this beautiful multi-million-dollar horse ranch, and just be and learn to deal with the things. And then you're given an opportunity um to disclose the things that, or to get help with the things that really really have like aided you for so many years. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think I told one single cop story while I was there.
Hmm.
Not one time did I go, I'm sad, because like they know that that was your job, and like you did it, and like it screwed you up. Why keep rehashing it and living in the past? Like there's no good outcome to the story of I pulled a dead informant out of the river, or I bought drugs from a guy and had to leave the kids there for a while I went. And there's no matter what, unless whatever deity you believe in comes down from the heavens and says you did good, there's no positive outcome from that, other than for you as the cop that does that. There you stop feeling like I did anyway, a feeling of like I was making a difference after about 2 weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just plugging holes in the dam as quick
Hmm.
as you can. And it just, the program in and of itself, they have horses out there, and they go through some things with horse therapy. And I have horses, and um I didn't realize the negativity that I was carrying. Like, they did an experiment with the horse after you talked about something you liked, and things that you liked, and teamwork, and how you dealt with the horse, as opposed to like when you're dealing with shit and you're in a bad place. Those horses can sense that. Well, people can too. And then you're going to feed off people being negative to you, because you don't realize that you're giving off this terrible vibe.
Yeah.
I mean, you the saying, your vibe attracts your tribe, that cracks me up, because you don't even realize that you're giving off that energy and in that way.
Hmm.
And they went through that. We went through some childhood shit. um we learned to work as a team with a lot of people from different walks of life, with different levels of trauma, so to speak.
Hmm.
um and and there wasn't a single time during that process where I felt like somebody wasn't giving me 100% of their attention, whether that was fellow people that were in the program with me, or the instructors. I've just never been in a situation where it was like I'm not a huggy, touchy feely person, and it wasn't. I mean, that was there, but that was there at your, like, if you wanted to. Like, it wasn't
Yeah.
like, okay, today now we're gonna hug, because that would have turned me off.
Yeah.
I don't like people in my bubble, but it was always like they were on this journey with you and they genuinely cared. And the meals there were like, they have like chefs there. Like, it's not like, I mean, every meal is a production in healthy limits and healthy amounts. They go over, a wellness list. Like, okay, have you had some tests done, like, to make sure that your blood sugar is good, and you're taking care of yourself. And they don't do that there, but they give you a list of things you need to do. And I actually came home from that and went and got my testosterone check, because that's a huge thing in law enforcement.
Yeah.
People don't realize that's a major regulatory substance that's in your body. My testosterone was like 47 or some shit, and it's supposed to be like,
Jesus.
yeah, like 900, or
Yeah.
you know
Over five.
so
Yeah.
yeah, and I got on testosterone replacement therapy, and got into an endocrinologist, and got a CPAP machine to help me sleep at night. And
Sorry,
there,
it is so common. Like, not to cut you up, but even just the
no,
sleep, the CPAP thing, everyone kind of laughs about it, but my God, it's a huge game changer. Huge.
well, if you don't sleep, you can't think.
Yeah.
And I was, they figured I was sleeping like maybe an hour and 15 minutes a night for
Yeah.
some nights. Like, fuck, man, like, how do you? That's not
Just
normal.
feel like shit every
That's like,
day.
yeah, that's like being on meth without the benefits of meth. I mean, like, there's not really an
Yeah.
upside to meth, but at least you have some energy.
Yeah, for sure.
And I had nothing. There was no sex drive. There was no relationship with my wife in that aspect. So it was very, very, very person based. Like, each individual person was their own part of that program. It wasn't like
Hmm.
there was no group think. There was no um you all the things that, like, all the situations where I had trauma, and where I just wanted to sit down with somebody and, like, just, like, fucking deal with it, like, accept the feelings. And I think about one time somebody said, "You good?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. What are you asking me for?" And then I went and sat in my car and cried for 25 minutes, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I was hanging on to my fucking steering wheel so hard that, like, I couldn't drive because my hands were like red, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. And it's like, I'm sitting alone in a dark parking lot, fucking crying my ass off,
Hmm.
when I should be talking to somebody else about this, and trying to find, like, you think to yourself, I don't want to spread this disease. Like, in law enforcement, you're like, I don't want to spread this sickness. Like, I don't want everybody to be fucked up like I am. But every one of us are, but we pretend we're
Yeah.
not.
You're trying to
Every single.
yeah, you're trying to find answers to the questions, but you don't even know what the questions are. It's
Correct.
yeah, it's
Yep.
crazy.
And yeah, and they had the answers. Like, just talk about it. And you sit in this, you get in this depressive state where you don't want to get out of bed. Well, getting up out of bed and getting your blood flowing and drinking some water is going to make you feel 150 times better than you did laying in that bed.
Hmm.
It's just, you need to find the strength to get the fuck out of the covers and go. And every single day, I find the strength to do that. And on the days where I think that I'm struggling, or other people can see that I'm struggling, because I'm like, like with Ed, I'm very vocal and very upfront about that. Because if my trauma can help one person not commit suicide, or help one person not be a shitty parent because they're absent, because they're there physically but not mentally, um those are the things that bring me peace, and that help me push through. And those are things we in law enforcement should be doing to begin with. All of it.
Absolutely.
You see things that no human being will ever see. You have a front row ticket to the greatest circus on earth every single day, whether you want it or not.
Hmm. What's out of that entire, I mean, 7 days is a long time. What would you say is the one thing that, I guess, either struck you the most or that you took away from the most? If you had to pick one thing, what would it be?
This thing, I'm present where my feet are, and knowing that I can center myself after about 3 minutes of just closing my eyes and saying that and concentrating on the thing that's in front of me. There's nothing like right now I'm talking to you, so I'm present where my feet are because there's nothing else I can be doing. And I relate that to scuba diving.
Hmm.
You're present where your feet are. So that gave me scuba diving every single day. That gave me a tool of I don't have to go throw on a pack and jump in the water. I can center myself right here, right now, in about 2, 3 minutes usually.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't work, I go for a walk. And if that doesn't work, there's other things that you can do. Um, but just showing up and trying is 98% of it. And that was the biggest takeaway for me is that like you are the master of your own mind. You can let it run and run and run and run about all the what ifs and the scenarios and um but if I'm saying to myself I'm present where my feet are, like I'm struggling well because I'm consciously in the moment.
Yeah.
So that was my biggest takeaway.
Um, when you were done, did you feel like, and this is a common thing that I hear, I experienced it myself, where I didn't go to a 7 day, mine was 4, but day 3 and 4, I felt like $1,000,000. Everything was great. Um, I get in my car and I start driving home, and the cell service gets put back into perspective, and then I get about a dozen emails, missed everything, and then reality just sort of set in on my 2 hour ride back home. And I pretty much realized that I had tools. I didn't have answers. I had tools, and I wasn't going to be fixed. Nothing could really fix me except for me. And I guess as the closer I got to home, I felt like I was losing all of the things that I had gained, and my feeling of feeling great started to feel okay. And by the time I got home, I felt good, but I realized that I couldn't live in that world every day and feel great. Now I was back in reality, and I only had, so many things that I retained, because when you're there, you're in the moment, you're there, you're present, you're in the moment, everything's great. And then when life started to pick back up, I realized very quickly that I'm going to be the one who's responsible for how I feel. When you were done with the program, um, and you were back home, did you feel like you had new tools on the tool belt versus before? And it's an obvious question, probably yes, but when reality hit again, did you have kind of an epiphany that you're really responsible for how you feel? You're responsible for, you mentioned getting up in the morning. I mean, just sort of having that mantra of, you know, getting up, standing up, and moving forward. Was that challenging or depressing? Or, I mean, it's kind of a weird question, but how did you
No,
feel when
I
you? Yeah,
I get it. Like, does it wear off?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's the biggest question that I get from people. And what I tell them is, you are the only one that can decide whether it wears off or not.
Interesting.
So I look at that. They send you home with an app, a Warrior Path app, and I brought that up. If I need to find where I'm at and I'm struggling, I have a whole host of classmates that went through this program that like, man, we're life bonded. Like, I talk to my buddy Kevin 3 or 4 times a day, not counting the terrible, terrible memes that I send him.
Uh-huh.
And you go home with a toolbox, but you got to remember that, okay, I'm a carpenter. I have a hammer and I have a sledgehammer, and I need to put this nail in the wall. I am not going to reach for the fucking sledgehammer every single time now. There's going to be times where you're going to fuck up and grab that sledgehammer, but it's less and less and less as time goes on. And now, I was just talking to my wife about this last night. Like, we had something happen, and like I would have lost my effing mind about it.
Hmm.
And I was just like, well, we're gonna deal with it, and we're gonna move forward. And it's not great, but and it was something simple, like we had a leaky pipe under the sink, and it ruined all our cupboards.
Hmm.
And I'm just like there's nothing I can do about it. I can't change this. This is where we're at right now with this, so we need to figure it out. And I know that seems like real minuscule, but when you're in that place where you're not thinking clearly, and everything sucks, and everyone around you sucks, and every situation is, this is God pissing on me. you know it's life, man. It's just life. There's going to be mountains that you're going to have to climb still. Like they didn't push the mountains down for me. They just made it easier for me to walk up them. If that's a good analogy,
It's a great
like
analogy.
I'm going to crawl up that mountain, and there's going to be times where I'm going to be tired and I'm going to be cold and I'm going to be, but I still want to go up that mountain because I know what on the other side is awesome.
Yeah.
You know, um, being able to have the power to show up at my daughter's cheerleading and not have anxiety and looking around like worried about threats or noises or like you're always going to be a cop whether you're carrying a badge or not, but like there's so much enjoyment in life that you can see that you're missing.
Hmm.
It gave me perspective to not backslide and to not you're going to stumble, but like not anywhere where your dick's in the dirt, you
Yeah.
know. And they truly care. um I talk to Shannon probably once a week. um and it's been 18 months since I've been there.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's proof that it sticks. In it it's all in it shows you your mindset. And a lot of times, at least for me, I would do things and not have a reason for it or why I did it. Like my reactions did not meet the, like I didn't know what a correct emotion was to regulate, sadness. Sadness was always anger. Like as a
Yeah.
cop, sadness becomes anger. Fear becomes anger. Um, disappointment becomes anger. Like just feel the emotion that's there.
Yeah.
It's okay to be sad. It's okay. Like I don't know, like I'm not a crier. Um, but like I can feel emotions normally now. Like if I'm happy about something, I'm genuinely happy. I mean, you can,
Hmm.
when I'm talking about dinosaur bones or meteorites, or I'm a genuinely happy guy talking about my daughter's accomplishments and like seeing her living her best life and doing the best that she can, and I'm not passing on the generational trauma of a shitty dad,
Yeah.
and I wasn't a shitty dad before because of how I grew up, but I'm present now. I'm absolutely present in every aspect of her life instead of just being the dad that's there, that's the scary dad.
Yeah.
And 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 to be able to have, like, if I could pay $200 million to have an outcome like I had from Warrior Path, it wouldn't be enough. Like I'm just I'm here today and I'm happy and I'm me. Like I'm 100% the best version of me for that day, if that makes sense. And there's days where I'm not amazing, but I show up and do what is required, and I'm okay with that. There's days where I struggle, but I struggle well at it. Um, there's there's so many gifts that I missed before. I know this like walking in the trees and seeing butterflies sounds dumb to a lot of people, but there's nature all around us, and I would never notice like the frailty of life or the amazingness of a sunset. Or I always, oh, it's a pretty sunset, and everybody's like, oh, it's so beautiful, and I'd be like, you're dumb.
Hmm.
And now I can really see that, and I see I can see hope in people's eyes when they talk to me, like, and before I would just see like whatever in my head that I thought that they were feeling at the time, which was 90% of the time not the correct emotion, and I didn't regulate that correctly.
Yeah.
And you don't realize when you get into that, you know, post traumatic stress or PTS or um whatever particular thing you have going on, you don't see the forest for the trees, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
I can feel love again. Like I understand that, like, there's a frailty in relationships and love, and you can ruin that, but you can rebuild it. There's so many things that good that came from it. um Somebody's like, if you had to pick one thing about it that you didn't like, what was it? And I'm like, I don't know, we got up kind of early, but like that's it. Like there's I had
Yeah.
to search for it. Like I'm not an early riser, and for me who at the time was like the most negative person in the world, like I could have walked into a, you know, the old saying, you'd bitch if you got hung with a new rope. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was like that. Like you know, you'd complain. I was given so many gifts, and I was just like just negative, you
Yeah.
know. And now I'm just so grateful for everything, and that's, you know, that's really changed my success and everything, because, you know, people see like, hey, this guy, like, he genuinely is passionate about this. Like he eats and breathes and it drinks this job and this new life and this family. And um you know, I said so many negative things before I went to the program. I'm like, I'm not going to go get brainwashed. I'm not going to go let them, you know, change how I am or me or whatever. And like, man, that Dustin died out there. Like he's not that person anymore. And um somebody asked me about something one day, and I'm like, yeah, I left that under a tree in Italy, Texas. Like I don't I don't care about that shit anymore. It holds no weight with me or control over me.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's fucking life changing, man. It's transformative.
Awesome. Well, Dustin, I think it's a good place to leave it. For the audience, can you go over some of your socials and your company one more time, just in case they want to reach out to you for some cool guns or grips in the future?
Yeah, I'm always around too if you're, you know, you're thinking about hurting yourself or whatever. I won't have the answers, but I'll listen and I'll find you the people that do. My social media is I'm shadow banned, of course, because of Meta.
Yeah.
So burkettcustoms.com, BURKETT, customs.com is my website, and Burkett Customs is my Instagram, and Burkett, BURKETT, Family Custom Knives on Facebook, and Burkett Customs on X.
Sweet. And then one more time, was it Warrior Path, the place that you went?
It's Warrior Path was the name of the program. It's bouldercrest.org if you want to go through and look at what they have to offer. And um, if you're thinking or you're wondering, like, is this going to help me? It's not going to hurt you. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, it's not going to make it worse. So the worst case scenario, you get a 7-day vacation away from your family, you know, with other dudes that have seen some shit.
Awesome. Very well said. Well, Dustin, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And thank you for the message. Guys, this wraps up episode 1, season 3. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mac.